Kia ora, good morning everyone, Richard Wong here from New Zealand again. So today we are going to look at Huawei's latest flagship smartphone, the Huawei Mate 20 Pro. So I thought the best way to start this review is that I do a bit of driving and come to the beautiful West Auckland here so that I can show you some of the new camera feature that is available on this smartphone. So the Mate 20 Pro is the successor to last year's Mate 10 Pro. So the Mate series is one of the two flagship series for Huawei. It comes with the Kirin 980 chipset, which is one of the world's first 7nm chipset. It has many improvements, it's much faster, more efficient, also has the dual NPU, the neural processing unit, which is the AI chip. So the chipset has a lot of improvement, and using it in real life, the phone does seems to be a lot more responsive. Everything seems to run just a lot smoother, faster, switching between app, launching app, and even running some of the very heavy games. Everything feels really fast, even compared with the P20 Pro, which was released just a few months ago. Now let's look at the front of the phone. It has a 6.3-inch OLED display. The display is very high resolution with very good contrast and color. I put it side by side with the next to the P20 Pro, which already has a very good OLED display. But compare this one to the P20 Pro, the display on the Mate 20 Pro is definitely a lot better. So one of the really cool features that is available on the screen is that it has the in-screen fingerprint sensor. So what you need to do is just put your thumb onto the area around here and then press on it, and then it will unlock the phone for you. So while this is probably the first time that you can use an in-screen fingerprint sensor, or maybe even the first time you heard of it, this is actually Huawei's second generation in-screen fingerprint scanner, because they previously already had another smartphone, the Porsche design Mate RS, which already also have an in-screen fingerprint scanner. And does it work well? I say yes, it's very fast and very reliable as well. But while the in-screen fingerprint scanner works very well, there is one little problem that I noticed when using it, is because unlike the traditional fingerprint scanner, which normally there's a bit of, whether it's at the back or the front, physically there's some tactile feedback. So when you place your finger there, you can know by just touching it where the fingerprint scanner is. While in this case, it's just somewhere on the screen. If you look at it, it will have some visual indication to tell you where it is. But if you are just touching it, you may be touching the wrong area. So the fingerprint scanner wouldn't work unless you place it on the correct area. But having said that, I think the in-screen fingerprint scanner is definitely the way to go, because by removing that physical fingerprint scanner on the phone, it just makes the overall design of the phone just a lot cleaner. And also, I think the fingerprint scanner is probably just the secondary way for people to unlock the phone, which they won't use it normally. That's because the phone has a very good and secure 3D face unlock feature that works super fast. And that brings to the next point. If you look at the top and the front of the phone, then you see a notch, and that's quite a wide one. And the reason is because inside that there are quite a number of sensor and camera and speaker and everything inside it. And part of the reason is to allow the secure 3D face unlock feature, but it also allows them to do some cool processing when you are taking photo or video, which I'll talk about it later in this review. The curved display definitely looks very nice, and it makes the overall design of the phone a lot smoother and a lot more modern. But having said that, I don't think it adds any special benefit when it comes to the user experience or the feature-wise. Now, while the front of the phone looks a little bit like some of the Samsung phone because of the curved display, if you turn it around and if you look at the back, then there's no doubt that this phone is very unique and you won't mistake it with another phone. And this is largely because of the very unique and distinctive 2x2 square-shaped camera flash setup near the top of the phone. So inside it, you will find the triple Leica camera setup, But unlike the triple camera setup on the P20 Pro, this time Huawei has put a 20 megapixel ultra wide angle camera on it, and then in additional there's the 40 megapixel large normal camera, wide angle normal camera, and then also the 8 megapixel telephoto camera on it. So there's 3 cameras on it, and then there's a camera flash at the top left. And while you may not be able to see it in the video, the green Mate 20 Pro I'm holding right now has a special texture glass back on it. So the typical glass back smartphone, the surface is very smooth and also very slippery when you're holding it. But this one, there's some special texture on the glass, so it is still a glass back, but when you're holding it, then you feel like it gives you some extra resistance, so you don't feel like you are going to drop the phone any seconds. The build quality of the phone is just excellent. It just feels very solid and also feels very premium as well. You hold it on the hand, it just feels excellent. And I really like the design of the phone. It just looks very beautiful, and also it looks very unique, which is something that doesn't really happen that often in the smartphone market these days. Oh, and before I forgot, the phone also has a huge battery in it. It has a 4200 mAh battery, which is larger than the one that is available on the P20 Pro or the Mate 10 Pro, which is 4000, which is already very big, but this one is even larger, 4200 mAh. And on top of that, it has Huawei's new supercharging technology. So the new one, it is a 40 volt charging, which is quite a lot higher power than the other supercharging technology available on the market. And the phone also supports wireless charging. This is Huawei's first smartphone that supports wireless charging, and they put in a very fast 15 volt wireless charging system in it. This is definitely one of the fastest wireless charging phone in the market. And on top of that, this is also the world's first smartphone that supports reverse charging. So what is reverse charging? So pretty much as the name suggests, this phone, you can use it to charge other accessory or even phone that supports wireless charging. So for example, if you have a Bluetooth headset that support wireless charging, and you can just place it on top of the Mate 20 Pro, and you can use the Mate 20 Pro to charge your Bluetooth accessory. Or you can even put another phone that supports wireless charging, and you just put it on top of the Mate 20 Pro, and the Mate 20 Pro can charge the other phone as well. So I have tried to charge the latest iPhone. I'm using this one, and it works very, very well. Okay, I think I have done more than enough talking, so let's go, and I will take some photo and show you some of the camera feature that is available on the Mate 20 Pro. If you're from New Zealand, you would definitely know where I'm right now. Looking at the background, I'm at the Muriai, which is the gannet colony. A lot of gannets here in summer, and I thought this would be one of the good locations to show you the new camera system, because the Huawei Mate 20 Pro, it has a triple Leica camera setup, and unlike the P20 Pro, now it has the additional ultra wide angle, which I personally think is a very useful feature for taking a lot of different kinds of photos. So let me show you a quick example of what it can do. Alright, so let's say I'm here, let me show you, and you see the beautiful gannet colony down there. Okay, so this is I'm now using the normal, just the normal wide angle lens, which is the 28mm lens, which is what you usually have on a smartphone. And let me just take a photo. Okay, so this is what it will look like with just a normal typical smartphone camera lens. And now let me switch to the telephoto lens, and that allows me to take photo of objects that's further away, or just want to zoom in a particular part of the scene. For example, now I'm just looking at the tip of that the area over there. Or those people that's fishing further away over there. like this. And now I'm shooting at 3 times. I can change to 5 times, which is the hybrid zoom, or I can even use digital zoom 10 times if I want, if I'm shooting JPEG file. 5 times the result is still okay, pretty good, but 10 times wide, I think the result is not really that good. It's okay for Instagram or Facebook, but if you want to print it out or do something more serious, then I would recommend not using the 10 times. Okay, now so we have tried the normal and the telephoto, and now let me switch to the ultra wide angle lens, which is this one. And now you can see how much wider it is compared to the normal wide angle lens. For landscape photos, it just make the just give you a special, like the visual impact is quite stronger when you are taking photo using the ultra wide angle lens. Oh, by the way, this is a beautiful spot if you want to take some sunset photo, because when it's sunset, the sun is virtually just right in front of us. Let me turn the angle like this. So it will be right in front at the middle of the screen here. So yeah, that looks absolutely stunning when the weather is good. So yeah, as you can see, there is a big difference between the new ultra wide angle lens and the normal wide angle lens. So with the 3 lenses together, I think that just gives you a lot more creativity and also flexibility when you are taking photos. And actually, it's not just photos. Even when you are taking video, you can also zoom in and zoom out during the video recording. So that also gives you quite a bit extra flexibility when you are taking video as well. So let me just show you a quick example. So now I'm just taking video using just the normal 1x lens, and I can tap the button and swap to the 3x zoom lens. And I can tap the button on the screen, change to 5 times. Still look pretty nice, but obviously you're starting losing a bit of detail. And now I swap back, and actually I swap to the ultra wide angle lens. So as you can see, it is super wide, and that looks very nice. And not only just jumping between the different one, I can also use pinch to zoom to just smoothly transit from one focal length to other, like this. Now back to 3 times from 0.6, and let me zoom out. So there is a little bit of jumping between, especially when it's switching from one camera lens to the other. But overall, I think this is a very good and useful feature. There is another feature that is available on the Mate 20 Pro. Not exactly new, because it has been available for a while, and I believe it's available on most, if not all, the Huawei smartphone. Is the light painting mode. I've even done a separate video that talk about the light painting mode, how to use it and what are the effects that you can get. And with the new ultra wide angle lens, it's just a very good way to take some nice landscape photo using the light painting mode, doing some long exposure. So I'm just going to take some light painting mode photo using the Mate 20 Pro here. And a good thing why I like the light painting mode so much is that it's very easy to use. You don't have to calculate the exposure or anything. You just press the button, let it do the work, and then when you finish, you just click the stop button. You can also see the live view, so you know how long exposure you want to do. And another good thing is, compared to a normal camera, which if you do a long exposure on a daytime, even an overcast day like today, you can easily overexpose the photo unless you use a natural density filter on top to darken the scene. If you do like a 5-second long exposure, you would almost definitely overexpose your photo no matter what aperture you choose. But with the light painting mode, then there's no such problem, because it's just basically taking lots of photos and merge them together. So there's no problem of overexposure or anything like that. Okay, so let's take a photo, and I can show you some of the result. Okay, to take a photo using light painting mode, first thing, just put your phone on a tripod. Just a small one is good enough, like this one. And then you switch to the light painting mode, which I already have here. Okay, and yeah, and then basically just press the start button, start recording, look at the preview. When you think the blur effect you see is good enough, then press stop, and there you have it. And this is the photo I got. That's very easy, and just the effect looks very cool. And let me take a few more photos around here, because there are lots of ways, which is good for the light painting mode, and using different focal length. And let me show you the results as well. As you can probably see, I really enjoy taking photo using the light painting mode to do some long exposure photo. But if there's one thing I want to see in the future, it would be great if Huawei can combine their really great night mode with the light painting mode, because right now light painting mode you still have to use a tripod. If they allow you to take a long exposure light painting mode photo, maybe even just 3-5 seconds without using a tripod, that would make the light painting mode even more powerful than what it is right now. Okay, now we are back to my office, and we can talk about the camera and also the discuss about the image quality a little bit more. Let's talk about each of the three cameras on the Mate 20 Pro. The main camera is the 40 megapixel half-inch RGB sensor, which I assume is exactly the same one as the one on the P20 Pro. So this sensor is quite a lot larger than the normal sensor on most other smartphones, even bigger than the one on the latest iPhone or the Samsung Galaxy phones. And the image quality, as we have seen on the P20 Pro, is excellent because of the large sensor, also the fast aperture, and also the Huawei has some really clever computational tricks to further improve the image quality. The 40 megapixel output resolution, it just gives you lots of details, especially when you are shooting in RAW. Then you do a bit of post-processing yourself, and then you can extract tons of details from the center all the way to the corner. It still got very good sharpness. Now I did a bit of comparison between the Mate 20 Pro and the P20 Pro, and just see if there's any changes between the output from the main camera. And I would say overall the image quality is very similar between the two cameras, but I found that the Mate 20 Pro's flare resistance seems to be a little bit better. Otherwise, even the high ISO, look at this image I shot at ISO 3200, which is pretty high ISO, and look at the two photos. If you zoom in, you can see that the Mate 20 Pro actually has less artifact. If we jump over and look at the one on the P20 Pro, you can see that near the corner where the darkest part is, there is quite a bit of artifact. You can see some vertical stripes on the photo that the one on the Mate 20 Pro doesn't really have, or really not that obvious. So I'm not too sure if they have changed the sensor, improved the sensor a little bit, or it's just because the Mate 20 Pro has a much more powerful Kirin 980, so they may have done some better image processing. But yeah, look at the JPEG, it definitely, the Mate 20 Pro looks quite a bit cleaner than the P20 Pro. I have actually also compared the raw output from the two cameras, the identical shot. The raw file from the Mate 20 Pro is also quite a bit cleaner with less artifact if you compare that with the P20 Pro. So overall, that is definitely a very good news, because with the Mate 20 Pro, Huawei has swapped out the monochrome sensor and put in the ultra wide angle camera instead. The monochrome sensor is supposed to help improve the image quality, especially low light performance. But now, even without the monochrome sensor on the Mate 20 Pro, the low light performance seems to be just as good, actually slightly better than the P20 Pro. And talk about the low light performance. the Mate 20 Pro, just like the P20 Pro, you can shoot at ISO all the way up to 102,400, which is crazily high for a smartphone. You can see so much detail that normally your naked eye cannot even see when you're shooting in a very dark room or at night outside. And if you want even better quality, you can just switch to the night mode, which was also carried over from the P20 Pro, and the result is awesome. You can take handheld long exposure photos, so it's up to like around 5 seconds or so. The camera basically is just taking lots of different photos at different exposure level, and magically can blend them together pretty much flawlessly. The image result I got normally is very good. Even if my hand is moving quite a bit, surprisingly the result is still a very sharp photo and looks very good quality, very detailed. And also if you compare the photo I shot using just the high ISO mode and the night mode, you can see that the night mode, the phone is trying to balance between the highlight and the contrast quite a bit. So you can see like the highlight area is not as easily blown out compared to the normal high ISO shot. So depends on what you are shooting, because normally when you are shooting at night, the contrast between the street light or whatever light and the shadow area is really high contrast. So it will be good to use the night mode. If the scene you are shooting doesn't really have very high contrast, then the result if you're shooting using the night mode can look a bit what I would call the HDR-ish. It just looks a bit fake, because it's trying to compress the dynamic range. If the dynamic range wasn't that big in the original photo, then the result of course wouldn't look very realistic. So I want to see how good the raw file is coming out from the 40 megapixel main camera. So I intentionally took this photo, underexposed it by freeze stop and then bring it into Lightroom, and then try to bring back the exposure back to what it should be, and the result looks pretty good. There are definitely quite a bit of noise, especially in the shadow area, and the color seems to shift slightly, very tiny. But overall, remember this is from a smartphone camera, and I have to say the ability for me to push freeze stop in post-processing is definitely very impressive. Okay, next let's talk about the ultra wide angle 20 megapixel camera. So overall, I say the sharpness is pretty decent. When you are shooting some very high contrast scene, I can see a little bit of glow in the highlight area. But apart from that, the overall color, sharpness, everything is pretty good. However, I do notice there is quite a bit of distortion when you are shooting using the ultra wide angle lens. When I start doing the review and testing the camera, I actually didn't really notice it because I was just shooting in JPEG at that time, and I believe the camera would apply some distortion compensation when you are shooting in JPEG. So the output JPEG file, the distortion is not really obvious. But when I switch to shoot in RAW, then I noticed there is quite a bit of distortion near the very edge, very corner of the RAW file from the ultra wide angle camera. You can try to fix it or minimize it in post-processing, but I would highly recommend you try to avoid putting any vertical line near the very top edge or the very bottom edge of the frame, just to try avoid showing the distortion in your photo. But apart from that, I really love the ultra wide angle camera. It just gives me so much more flexibility in terms of the framing or where I can shoot photo, and also just give you a completely different feel. I'll talk about it a little bit later in this review. Now let's move on to the telephoto lens. The telephoto camera has 80mm equivalent focal length, and the output resolution is 8 megapixels. So this is the lowest resolution compared to all three cameras. But the image quality from the telephoto lens is also pretty good. The sharpness is good, the color is also good. Now, because of the nature of the telephoto lens and also the fact that this telephoto lens has a smaller aperture than the other two lenses on the camera, so if you want to have good, nice, clean photo from the telephoto lens, you definitely need to have quite a bit of light. So when you are shooting on a good bright sunny day, then the photo from the telephoto lens can look pretty good. Overall, if you're comparing the free camera, the ultra wide angle camera, the wide angle camera, and then this telephoto camera, the telephoto camera is definitely the weakest camera out of the three in terms of the output image quality and specs. Now, one of the few things that a lot of people complain about the P20 Pro is that the JPEG output seems to be over sharpened, and I've also complained about it in my P20 Pro review. So when I pick up the Mate 20 Pro, one of the first things I tested is that I compare, I shot a photo using the P20 Pro and then also identical photo using the Mate 20 Pro and just see is the over sharpening issue still there. So look at these two photos that I shot pretty much side by side using same settings, and both at 10 megapixel. This is the 10 megapixel output from the main camera. And if you zoom in, then you can easily see the P20 Pro is definitely over sharpened, at least to my preference. And if you look at the Mate 20 Pro one, it looks so much better. It's not over sharpened anymore. For me, I think that looks very, very nice. So yep, don't worry, over sharpen issue is not there anymore. I'm sure Huawei has heard all the people's complaint about it and they made some improvement to it. But not only that, when I'm shooting this two photos, I'm just shooting in the normal photo mode and I have the master AI on. So the camera does detect the greenery on both camera, and you can see it also tries to apply some adjustment to the photo. And the photo from the P20 Pro, you can see the green is quite a bit oversaturated. And if you look at the one from the Mate 20 Pro, it's still quite saturated, but it looks a lot more realistic and pleasing compared when you compare it to the one from the P20 Pro. Yeah, so if you put the image from the Mate 20 Pro and the P20 Pro side by side, you can definitely see that Huawei has spent quite a bit of effort in fine-tuning and improving the JPEG and also the AI adjustment on the Mate 20 Pro, and the result is just a lot more natural and pleasing. And I just talked about the AI. So yes, the Mate 20 Pro, just like the P20 Pro and also the Mate 10 Pro, it also has the AI scene recognition, and it can recognize quite a wide range of different scenes, and then it can automatically apply some adjustment to it to give you a very nice output image without you have to do any post-processing yourself. But with the Mate 20 Pro, because it now has a wide angle lens, so it can do even more adjustment recommendation to you. So for example, when you are shooting some photo that the camera recognizes that it should be more suitable for using wide angle camera, then it will prompt you, just ask you, hey, do you want to switch to the ultra wide angle camera? For example, if you are shooting some landscape scene and the camera recognizes that, oh, this scene, if you're shooting with the ultra wide angle camera, it could look quite good, then it will prompt you and just ask you, do you want to switch to the ultra wide angle camera? And when you are trying to shoot a close-up or macro photo, the camera will detect that and it will automatically switch to the ultra wide angle lens, because the ultra wide angle lens has the macro mode, which allows you to take photo as close as about 2.5 centimeters, which is very, very close. So yeah, it's good to see Huawei just keep developing the AI scene recognition and just make it more and more useful for taking different kind of photos. Because the macro mode allows you to take photo as close as 2.5 centimeters, so your camera is very, very close to your subject. So quite a lot of time, your camera can be casting shadow onto your subject. So I have a little tips I want to share with you guys. So when you are taking macro photo using the Mate 20 Pro, because of the close, very close focus distance, try to take photo from the side of the object or even from below, that is trying to avoid casting shadow, because most of the time the light source is from above. It can be from the sun or it can be from the light on the ceiling. So yeah, if you put your camera directly on top of the object, the chance is that you're going to cast shadow onto your object. So yep, try to shoot from the side or from below and point up, then it will minimize the chance that you will cast shadow. With the multiple camera at the back and also the front of the phone, it allows the Mate 20 Pro to work out a 3D depth map when you are taking photo. So it has the portrait mode. When you are in portrait mode, it can also create a fake shadow depth of field effect that you can blur out the background completely and make it looks like it's a photo that taken using a large DSLR camera with a fast aperture lens. So this is not really new. It has been available on a lot of Huawei smartphone, I think since the P9 from 2 or 3 years ago. This feature is already available. But Huawei has made some more changes to the portrait mode with the Mate 20 Pro. So one of the first thing is that you can change the shape of the bokeh in the app. So instead of just the normal circular shape bokeh, you can change to the heart shape. You can change the swirly, it's called a cat's eye kind of swirly bokeh, or a disc bokeh. So look at these few photos of my little boy that I shot using the Mate 20 Pro with the different bokeh effect. You can see how happy he becomes once I switch the bokeh to the swirly bokeh. And another feature in the portrait mode is that you can turn on the 3D lighting effect. So this is a feature that I've talked about a few times in my previous Huawei smartphone review, and in my previous review, if you have watched them, you will notice that I'm not really impressed by the 3D lighting effect, because I found sometimes the effect it's just not too obvious, and then sometimes it just doesn't look good at all. So I never really a big fan of the 3D lighting effect. But this time, looks like Huawei has also made some improvement to it. Some of the 3D lighting mode on the Mate 20 Pro actually looks pretty cool. That makes me want to actually use the 3D lighting mode a little bit more, and kind of hope that Huawei will keep on working on it a bit more and adding more and more different 3D lighting effects. Okay, next let's talk about the video recording, and let's talk about the front camera first. With the P20 Pro, the front camera was only 720p, but now with the Mate 20 Pro, the front camera can now record video up to 1080p resolution. And it also has the HDR feature, which I have mentioned in the Nova 3 review. So basically that feature, if you turn it on, then the camera will make some hardware adjustment to try to improve the dynamic range, so minimize the chance of blown out highlight. Okay, next let's talk about the rear camera. You can record video up to 4K resolution using the rear camera. Unfortunately, there's still no 4K 60p output available on the Mate 20 Pro. However, AIS, which basically is some sort of electronic image stabilization, is now also available for when you are recording 4K video. And I've done a bit of testing just to see how effective the AIS is when recording 4K video. Very impressed by how effective it is in minimizing the camera shaking. However, I do notice there's a bit of artifacts near the edge of the frame, especially when I'm turning the camera to left or right. Interestingly, I didn't notice that when I'm shooting using the ultra wide angle camera, so I'm not too sure if it's just a bug or it's some limitation. So hopefully Huawei can minimize this artifact in one of the future firmware update. Apart from that, the 4K video quality and also the AIS performance overall are both pretty decent. However, even though overall I'm quite happy with the AIS, there are also a few downsides with this system. Just like any electronic image stabilization system, you have to crop the video a little bit when you are using electronic image stabilization, because that would allow the processing to move the picture around a bit when you are moving your camera. That is to smoothen the output. So this is definitely one of the downsides, because your view angle will be slightly not as wide if you don't have any electronic image stabilization system. Fortunately, with the Mate 20 Pro, you have the ultra wide angle lens, so maybe if you really want to have a wide angle output, then you can switch to the ultra wide angle lens, and after the cropping, then you still get a pretty wide angle output. The other limitation is that the AIS seems to only work when you are using the default camera app. So if you are using any other third-party camera app, for example, if you are shooting some video using Instagram or Facebook or some third-party video camera app, then the AIS seems not working at all when you are recording video using those apps. So if you want to share some footage onto social media, definitely use the default camera app to capture the video first, then you switch to your app and then post the video that you have captured just before that. Another thing that I complained when I was reviewing the P20 Pro was that the P20 Pro didn't have any external memory card slot. So if you do the math, the 128GB storage, actually it doesn't allow you to store a lot of photos. If you go for a long holiday, then the 128GB storage, even if you just use it purely to store photos and some videos, is definitely not very enough. So there's a good news and bad news for the Mate 20 Pro. The good news is there is a external memory card slot that is available on the Mate 20 Pro, so you can use external memory card and put it into the Mate 20 Pro to increase its storage size. Now the bad news is the memory card that you can use on the Mate 20 Pro is not the typical micro SD card. It is a format called Nano SD, which seems to be a proprietary format that is introduced by Huawei. But what does that mean? That means the Nano SD card, you may not be able to buy it easily from any shop, just like the micro SD card. And also the second thing is the price of the Nano SD card, because this is not a open format. So if it is only made and available from Huawei, then the price, you don't know what the price will be. I have asked Huawei about more information for the Nano SD card, but so far I got no information yet. So this is a bit of good and bad news. The good news is finally I can expand the memory storage for the phone. But yeah, the bad news is it may not be as cheap and easily purchasable if you compare it to the micro SD card. There's one little complaint I want to make about the camera app, which I probably have noticed before, but it becomes more obvious with the Mate 20 Pro. In the camera app, you can go to the setting to choose what is the output image quality you want to choose. If you choose the 40 megapixel output resolution, when you go and take photo, you notice that little box that allow you to switch between the normal camera, the telephoto camera, and the ultra wide angle camera is no longer there. To allow you to switch between the three camera, you have to go into the setting again and choose a lower output resolution. So I understand the reason why they do that, because when you choose 40 megapixel output, then of course if you can't have the same output resolution if you switch to the ultra wide or the telephoto lens, because they are lower resolution. But it is a bit of inconvenience, because it means if I want to switch to the ultra wide angle lens, then I have to go to the settings and change to the lower resolution. Then I can switch to the ultra wide angle lens, and when I switch back to the normal just the 40 megapixel camera, if I want a high resolution output, then I have to go to the settings again and I change to 40 megapixel, which is a bit of hassle because with the new ultra wide angle lens, I found myself actually switch between the three cameras quite regularly. So that means I have to go into the settings quite regularly, and sometimes I forgot when I switch back to the normal 40 megapixel sensor camera. Definitely I would prefer, even if I select 40 megapixel, still allow me to switch between the different camera, but maybe with a small indicator on the screen, just tell me, oh, now it is 40 megapixel and now it is only 8 megapixel because you are using the telephoto lens. Something like that would be very good. I think it would be a good compromise between like not letting you do and not letting people know that you are outputting a lower resolution. But I do notice a interesting thing, or maybe you can call it a workaround, is if you go to the Pro mode and if you go to the image quality and if you enable the raw output, even if you select the 40 megapixel output, the camera app would allow you to switch between the 3 different camera while maintaining the 40 megapixel option. So yeah, I don't know whether it's a bug or just some design issue or something like that, but I hope Huawei can do something to improve this area and just make it easier to use, especially for users who want to always shoot at the highest resolution available. So it was really not easy to do this camera review because the Mate 20 Pro, there are so many new feature improvement that comes with the camera. So it actually took me quite a while to figure out what are the new features I want to mention in this review and what are the ones that I have to, sacrifice and not talk about. So in the end, there are lots of new features that I didn't even have a chance to mention. For example, the wireless projection, the new version of the Huawei Share, the better water resistant, the dual band GPS. There are so many new features that I didn't even got a chance to talk about. And then there are also so many other features. They are not actually new, but they are like inherit from some of the recent Huawei smartphones. That is also still very cool, and some of them are still unique to Huawei. But in the end, I just don't want to make this video like a 2-hour long review, which end up meaning no one is gonna to watch it from start to the end. I highly recommend you to check out some of my other Huawei smartphone reviews, especially the P20 Pro review, because pretty much all the features that's available on the P20 Pro are still available on the Mate 20 Pro. I remember when I was reviewing the Mate 10 Pro just 12 months ago. At that time, I was already very impressed by the Mate 10 Pro. I was impressed by the build quality, the camera quality, the overall performance. Everything is very good with the Mate 10 Pro. But if you put it side by side with the Mate 10 Pro and the Mate 20 Pro together, you'll be amazed by how much the Huawei managed to improve the Mate series just shortly within a year. Even when I put the Mate 20 Pro and the P20 Pro side by side, the P20 Pro was just released 6 months ago, and it is one of the most talked about phone that was released in the 2018. Many groundbreaking changes. Put it side by side with the Mate 20 Pro. The Mate 20 Pro just is so much better. The design is better, the build quality is better, the camera is better, the processor is faster, it has more feature. It's pretty amazing because by comparing this free phone that was released within a 12-month period, you can see how fast and how much Huawei is improving and pushing the feature and technology on their smartphone. By no means the Mate 20 Pro is the perfect smartphone. For example, 4K 60p video recording, which is available on most other flagship smartphones, but it's still missing on the Mate 20 Pro. But if you consider the build quality, the feature, the amount of innovations, and also the price of the phone, then it's quite hard to find another smartphone that is overall better than the Mate 20 Pro. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you find it useful. If you like this video, please support this channel by giving it a thumbs up, comment on it, and share it. And thank you for watching again, and I will see you next time.